Our next guests are self-described guerrilla philanthropists. They've seen firsthand how small ideas can have a big impact. In fact, that's at the core of the Awesome Foundation's work. Their unique nonprofit distributes microgrants because they believe small ideas keep the world moving. So by providing resources, leverage, and recognition, they're turning everyday people into citizen problem solvers. Each month, 10 lucky recipients are given $1,000. Their ideas range from the scientific to the sublime. Because the awards are relatively small, the Awesome Foundation can take more risks and adapt more easily, month by month, chapter by chapter. Wondering who's behind all this awesomeness, how they got here, and where they're going? Me too. Joining us to answer these pressing questions and more, we welcome Awesome Foundation New York's founding trustee and dean, Jesse CHAN-NORRIS. New York chapter co-founder, HUANG, and chancellor of the Institute on Higher Awesome Studies, CHRISTINA. Welcome to Full Frame. Christina, obviously I should start with you with such an august title. Is there a fight over these titles, or do you just come up with them? I mean, that's pretty awesome in itself.
Yeah, no one really wants to be in charge, so not so much a fight.
It's funny, guys, I'll get to you in just a second. The ladies first. Christina, I saw your talk at the TEDx in Boston, and it's just simply stated, it's just hilarity, people laughing uproariously, and you kind of get the sense that maybe this is silly, but I think silly is probably the wrong word. The word you use is fun. There's a lot of fun involved, so talk to us about that.
Sure. I first got involved with the Awesome Foundation while I was working with one foot in the nonprofit world, and I'd gotten a little frustrated with how fast people burn out and how everything was just taken so seriously because people were in perpetual crisis mode, that there wasn't really time to think more innovatively or have fun with the ideas. So Awesome Foundation really appealed to me as a way to get away from that and let people actually have fun with giving, which is what makes it a more sustainable way to give.
And would you guys agree? I mean, is that pretty much what drew you in as well, Jesse?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember in New York from, I don't know, the late 90s, early 2000s, when I moved to the city, where lots of fun things were happening. People were doing things just because they were fun. They weren't on social media. And the Awesome Foundation, I don't know, had this sense of, I like to call it, I think fun is right, but I also like to think of it as whimsy and adding a bit of whimsy back into the city that is so focused on, real estate and startups and that kind of thing.
Would you agree? I mean, do you have to be young and with it? I mean, can I join, or?
Definitely.
You look stunned at the question, like no, maybe not, but I'll try and finesse
we welcome trustees of all ages, so we have people from recent grads from college to people in their 60s and beyond. And part of Awesome Foundation is also sort of openness and accessibility, right? That anybody with 9 other friends could start their own chapter in their own city, their own town, around any other theme. We were really trying to fill this gap about how everyone could be sort of a sponsor, a patron of the arts and of awesome things.
And the interesting thing is talking to you earlier, I mean, everybody's their own entity. I mean, it's like herding kittens, as you guys describe it. I mean, every chapter's different, how they do things. It seems very, very loose, fluid.
I think it is fluid, and I think that that's sort of because it's, we're from the New York chapter, and so New York has its own flavor, but every chapter has its own flavor. Every chapter, we organize our chapters geographically, or for the most part, and that actually helps keep things closer to home, keeps things smaller, keeps the impact greater. So $1,000 on a global scale might make a difference, it might not. $1,000 on a local scale can actually make a big difference to somebody.
And you know what's interesting, you mentioned burnout, but the other thing, people think of philanthropy, they think of stuffy and just kind of very organized, and these galas, and we've got to get in our tuxedos and stuff, and your galas are a little bit more simplistic, I've heard. Is that another part of this, is breaking those chains and saying, hey, anybody can get involved and it doesn't have to be so structured?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when the Awesome Foundation started in Boston back in 2009, the impetus was really that, you could get a $10,000 grant or a $100,000 grant, but if you just wanted $1,000 to do something small, to prototype an idea or to start, just exploring something that you wanted to do, it was actually just as hard to get $1,000 as it was to get $100,000. You had to go through, maybe harder, yeah, you had to go through the whole grant process, and it would take a really long time, and we saw artist friends who basically just gave up on their ideas because the process took too long. And so the original design inspiration was, how can you do this in a way that's super lightweight? You know, you don't have to clear it with anyone. It's really just people getting together for the price of, I think the original pitch was, you know, for the price of like 10 to 15 burritos. You know, what can you give to the community to let somebody else make something awesome happen?
Right. Well, and like Christina, I worked in traditional philanthropy and nonprofits as well, and kind of with traditional foundations, you know, they're spending 6 figures to give away 7, or spending 7 to give away 8, you know, and for a $1,000 micro grant, we're not going to be doing sort of report backs about impact assessment or about really deep kind of due diligence, because $1,000 is just a way to learn and to experiment. You know, in the 5 years we've been doing this, we've only had one project not work out, and the guy actually gave back the rest of the money. So,
wow.
You know, there's that sort of social trust there too, where we don't have to do a lot of due diligence because we make it a public thing, and people know that, you know, if they're not going to execute, they can give the money back, or they can talk about it and sort of have that relationship rather than this sort of formality.
Well, and you know, you're making some really interesting points. It just seems so layered too, and complex and difficult. If I'm like, I got this fantastic idea, I just need $1,000. How many layers do I have to go through to get to the 3 of you and have you sign off and say it's a great idea, go for it?
We have a 3-question application. So it's
That's so many layers.
A lot of layers. It's a, you know, it's like a 10-minute application, right? It's who are you, what's your idea, and how are you going to use the money? And we basically leave it at that. We have an additional question on the New York chapters, which is really what makes this awesome. Just to make people really think about how, you know, we say awesome, and it's sort of whimsical and fun, but we really do think, like, we have conversations at our meetings sometimes where we say, well, is this really, you know, capital A awesome for New York City? But that's it. And then the application comes in, we review them all once a month as a group, and then we choose one.
And Christina, I know that you were involved in the one where the guy, I love this, the guy has the shoe phone, which I think was on like Get Smart or one of those shows, so it's like maybe it's been done before. But didn't you folks go back to him and say, hey, come up with something else? I like this, but talk to us about that.
Yeah, so this guy, Paul from Australia, this was back when Awesome Foundation only really had a handful of chapters. And when it first started, it wasn't Awesome Foundation Boston, it was just the Awesome Foundation. There was really no plan that it would expand internationally. So the Boston chapter, as a result, just takes grant applications from all over the world. And this guy from Australia submitted a pretty great project where he really wanted to build a phone into a shoe, like in the spy movies. And have it be functional, and you know, it got very, very close to winning for that month, but it just didn't quite have something. Or he had already built the phone shoe, and so we thought, you know, what really difference is our money going to make in this project? But we liked it so much, we reached out to him and said, hey, you should come back with something else if you have like any new ideas. And so he came back and said, you know, I want to build a distributed mesh network for phones to be able to work when there's no cell phone reception offline in the case of crises or super rural areas. And we were like, oh, okay, yeah, that's quite different from the shoe phone, but we'll take it, you know. And so we ended up giving him the grant, and I love this to this day. On his website, he has a section called Grants, and it says, you know, the Awesome Foundation for the Arts and Sciences, which is what we jokingly called ourselves in the beginning, $1,000. And then the next grant application, the next grant he got was for, I think, $250,000 or something like that. So, you know, we really helped him up his game in that situation, I think.
Still got top billing, though. That's the great thing.
True, yeah. It's chronological.
It's in alphabetical order, right?
So talk to me about that global footprint, though. I mean, it's really kind of gone. I guess viral is the key word everybody says these days, but I mean, it really has kind of spread, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have 70 chapters around the world right now, and they're all self-organized. Somebody will hear about it. Hopefully, somebody will hear about this, hear about the Awesome Foundation now and say, I want to start this in my community. They'll get together 9 of their friends, and then we'll get an email from somebody saying, hey, by the way, I just started a chapter. What do I do? Yeah. And then it'll get going.
Yeah, Christina and I, a couple years back, were both in Brazil for work in Rio, and we just hosted a dinner, invited our local Brazilian friends, and told them about Awesome Foundation, and they've had a chapter in Rio ever since.
Wow.
You know, and 2 weeks ago, I was in Brussels for work, so I was talking about Awesome Foundation with people in Europe. I was in Kigali in Rwanda last week, and I was also telling people there about Awesome. And the idea is it's so simple that anybody could just get a group of friends together and start a chapter, you know, so we're just spreading the word.
I don't know, I don't want to tell you guys what to do, but I think International Godlike Ambassador would be a good title for him, right? I guess you got these great titles.
The Ambassador of Awesome.
Ambassador of Awesome. What are some of the ideas that have come up that you have a particular fondness of? And I get the sense you've already described one, so I'll start with you. Is there one that really kind of like, wow, this is really pretty incredible?
You know, we get asked this a lot, and it's sort of like choosing between your children, which one's your favorite. But I think
I'm going to make you do that.
I'm going to choose the Firstborn, which was the very first grant that we gave in New York, which is 2010, 2011, and it was a project called the BioBus, which is this biodiesel-powered school bus that has a science lab on board. So they go to schools where they don't have their own science labs and teach about life sciences. But the awesome part about that is not just the bus and the biodiesel, but this guy wanted to build a laser-powered tweezer. So using a laser, you can point at microorganisms like your amoebas and things like that, and it would actually sort of freeze them in place so you could look at it in a microscope. It's just awesome, right? There's lasers, there's science, there's kids, there's education, and it was really the first one, so I think it's one of the most memorable and sort of emotionally kind of touching because it was the first grant we gave.
How about you, Jesse?
I am particularly fond of the laser tweezers just because we got to put laser on our website as our coming out party. I am particularly fond of one of our most recent grants, which is the Sandwich Club Summit. It sounds, from what we can tell, like the Awesome Foundation for Sandwiches. It's a group of people that really love sandwiches and love it so much that they're going to have a summit where people can get together and listen to talks from people about sandwiches and their love of sandwiches and debate sandwiches.
But a whole sort of ontology of sandwiches too, right? Like, is a burrito a sandwich?
Right, exactly.
Right, is an open-faced sandwich a sandwich when there's only one piece of bread?
Exactly. And so, you know, and we ended up talking about this project a lot.
Over sandwiches?
Thai food, I think.
Over Thai food, I think. Yeah, it was sort of a, it should have been sandwiches.
We didn't know.
We didn't know yet. And then, you know, in the end, we were like, we're really excited about this project. We need to give them a grant.
So give me an idea, how much money has been distributed, how many grants, and then also the footprint of the Awesome Foundation. I mean, it's cool what it is, but I mean, obviously you can see as long as he's traveling, it's going to keep growing and growing and growing. So give me kind of that whole kind of structural element. I mean, what kind of money are we talking about overall, and how many grants?
I mean, yeah, I mean, to this point, we've given away 1,600 grants between all of our chapters, and that's, you know, because it's $1,000, approximately $1,000 each. It's about $1.6 million over the last 5 years.
And then as you grow, I mean, where do you see this? And I'll start with you, Jesse, and we'll go down the line, and we'll make it quick. But where do you see the Awesome Foundation maybe 5, 10 years from now?
Hopefully a chapter everywhere I might ever want to visit.
That's fair enough. Christina?
You know, I'd love to see Awesome Foundations at schools and at organizations just as a mechanism for getting people together and having fun while giving money away, less based on the geographic chapter model.
And I can almost predict what you're going to say. Everywhere you travel, there's going to be a chapter, right?
Well, like Jesse, I'd also like to see Awesome everywhere, but also see how we can be thought leaders in traditional philanthropy as well. So we actually have a chapter that's called Awesome Without Borders. That's a program in an existing family foundation, and they actually give $1,000 out every week. But we'd also like to see how traditional foundations can look at this awesome model of smaller grants as ways to learn. So I've actually talked to somebody who works for the US government, and are there ways to bring sort of more Awesome Foundation-like kind of grant giving to small projects, which is different from their traditional grant making.
Wow, could change everything.
Yeah.
Thank you, all three of you. It's been a great fun. Really appreciate it. Keep being awesome.
Thanks for having me.